release the light according to your ability to accommodate it. And that speech is a two-edged sword. Be careful how you use it. And we talked about basic rules of speech, especially that you must begin to consider your speech act as a controlled, voluntary act. And don't look upon speech as an involuntary, spontaneous thing. You've got to make it amal. It is amal. It has to be a voluntary choice to speak or not to speak, what words you're going to choose. And the more conscious we are of that, the more profound our speech becomes, and then it becomes an ibadah. It becomes an act of worship. In closing that lesson, I want to emphasize something that all of you know better than I. And that is that the scope of speech today is extremely broad, broader than ever imaginable in the past. And this is, of course, because of modern technology, radio, television, internet, YouTube, and social media, and other things as well. So we said in our lecture that it's easy to speak. The tongue is easy to use. But today it's easier than it's ever been in history. And in the past, when we spoke with our tongues, we're always speaking to a human being. And the fact that we're speaking to a human being regulates to some extent what we will say. But today, especially with the social media, we're often speaking to ourselves in a world of illusions and of imaginations. And it becomes very easy to say in social media what you would never say in person. And this is very dangerous. And for that reason, also, we have to beware of all these avenues of speech that we have today. And we have to be very careful about social media. Many people refer to it as anti-social media. The pictures we post are worth thousands of words, but they often lie. They create false images of ourselves, and we love to do that. I love to show myself on social media as something much greater than I know myself to be. And you get just the right angle, just the right pose. And many of our leaders destroy themselves through their anti-social media, posting statements of theirs, images of theirs, which they then come to believe. So that we see a charismatic leader be his own demise, often because of stuff he has put on social media. It's very dangerous, very, very dangerous. Again, pictures often lie too, so we have to be very careful. We must, when we post something, when we email something, when we send voice messages or Twitters or whatever it may be, you have to understand that all of these are speech acts, and you will be held responsible for them. And we could speak of certain crises that we've had in our English-speaking Muslim community over the last year that were generated by anti-social media. Even, in fact, there's one particular thing that bothered me tremendously. The man who started it didn't even mean to do it. But he puts a post on social media, and then it's out of his control. He shouldn't have done that. But he's not an evil person. It just got away from him. So we have to be really careful. And we need to have standards about how we use social media and how we don't use it. Everything you post, everything that you send in social media is an act of volition. So think it out. Be careful. And of course, it's so easy to press the button and to send, right? Especially because you're so convinced that what you've got to say is right, and so you don't wait, and then you regret. But like the king says, when the word comes out of my mouth, it's the king. And we're not kings. So we say something, we post something, we regret it forever, but it's out there. And we had some huge crises this last year. Dr. Abdul Hakim Jackson, who's a great friend of mine and of yours, I visited him in California, and he said to me in the context of that social media will not leave us a leader unscathed or a principle or value untouched. So we've got to be really careful. Got to be really careful. And again, considerations of harm and benefit.
Yeah.
That you're talking to the whole world. You do not know where this will end. So be really careful. Be really careful. Speech is deceptively powerful. It is so general. It is so easy generally just to say a word. But anti-social media makes that 1,000 times easier than it ever was before. And it blows things up like they were never blown up before. So we have to be really careful about that. Now we want to go to the second presentation. And here we'll be talking about al-kalamu fima la ya'nik. Here Imam al-Ghazali begins to talk about afatul lisan, the catastrophes of the tongue. And in this he begins with the least harmful and the easiest to control. So he talks about talking about what is not our concern, fudul al-kalam, excessive speech. Neither of those is actually bad in itself, but we have to pay attention to it. And then he talks about al-khawd fil batil, talking about falsehood, and then al-mira'u wal-jidal wal-jadal, and then al-khusuma. So we'll talk about these argumentativeness and things like that. Imam al-Ghazali says, we are at our very best when we guard our tongues and take great care in choosing the words we utter. And again, we talked about the three boxes, right? Is it true? Is it harmful? Is it beneficial? And can you do that every time you speak? That's virtually impossible, isn't it? But this is why training is essential. You've got to think about it, you've got to train, and after you speak, you've got to go back and review. And we can compare this to many things, like, for example, the fireman. Okay, the fireman goes into a burning house. If he's a really good fireman, he will know intuitively when is the floor going to collapse. And he'll say, get out. How does he do that? He wouldn't be able to tell you. But he's trained so much that he has intuitions about the fire and the burning house. And if you told him, how did you know the floor was going to collapse? He wouldn't be able to tell you, but he sensed it. And we can use the same metaphor looking at great athletes. So a great athlete in basketball or in soccer or whatever it may be, he trains or she trains over and over and over again. A basketball player may shoot the same shot tens of thousands of times a week. Okay? Just shooting it, running drills. Why does he do that? So that when he's in the game, he gets into the zone and he doesn't have to think anymore. Okay? And if he didn't train, he wouldn't be able to do that. So by training ourselves in speech, we seek to get into the zone. So that when we're speaking, we're in control of the process, and we have intuitive access to what is right and what is harmful and what is beneficial. Traditional societies and the spoken cultures of classical languages were all cultures that insisted on careful use of speech, extremely careful use of speech. The Arabs were like that. The pre-Islamic Arabs, the early Muslim Arabs, they were extremely careful with their speech. The Arabs, the Chinese, the First Nations of my land, even the traditional English, and many others were known for speaking very little, but saying very much in few words. Ma qalla wa dal. And this is the hallmark of civilization. And this is the hallmark of good culture, the proper use of language. So now Imam al-Ghazali has begun to tell us about blameworthy types of speech. And he's going to speak about 18 types of speech. And we'll see if we can get through this over the days. But, he will begin with what is least blameworthy, which is talking about what is not your concern, and also superfluous speech. And it's very important because since this is not blameworthy in itself, then it's a good place for you to train. Because here, the training is easy and natural. And by trying not to speak about what is not my concern and exerting myself in not saying excessively, not speaking excessively, then I begin to get that basic control of the tongue. And then I can use it in other things as well, bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. So in things like speaking about what is not our concern and superfluous speech, this is where we want to work on the discipline of good speech. Imam al-Ghazali says, hold to what concerns you. The types of falsehood that people involve themselves in are countless and complex. The only way to protect yourself from them is only to speak about what concerns you in religious and worldly matters. Mind your own business. Right? You do that, this is half of the battle. Contentiousness, which we want to talk about today, argumentativeness, litigiousness, wanting to take people to court, open more doors of evil than they ever close. So they should be avoided as much as possible. You can't avoid them completely, but they generally bring much more harm than good. And they easily bring out the worst sides of our character. Pride, self-satisfaction, and our predatory instincts, as-sabu'iyya, and triumphalism. I'm going to defeat this person. I'm going to show this person. Okay, if these speech acts become our nature, they will surely destroy us. And they are the nature of many of our brothers and sisters. Hopefully not of ourselves. I said 18 plagues of the tongue. There are actually 20. I think when I said 18, I was excluding these first two. But and in controlling our speech, of course, we prepare for the hereafter. We also seek God's pleasure, and it has huge spiritual benefits. But again, as Brother Ali was saying, we live in a time that is very cynical. And the various schools of postmodernism all share an extremely cynical view of reality and also of language. And basically the belief that language really doesn't mean anything. It means whatever you want it to mean. It's essentially a social interaction. And so we make of language what we want to make of it, and we reject that totally, completely. Language is a great gift of God, and language has meaning, and there is truth. And there is speech with dignity and speech without dignity, and we want to be careful that everything that we say is dignified. Bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. In postmodernism, speech is nothing but a social convention. It is not a receptacle or a vehicle of truth, or of honor, or of goodness. You're free to do with it whatever you want. And that's why also when postmodernists write history, you have to be really careful because they don't believe there's any truth there to begin with. And therefore, basically, they can say whatever they want. I could give you some good examples of that. They don't think there's any sin here. I will make up the past. True words for them are no different from false words. There is no light to be veiled in either case. All speech, really, in that point of view, is darkness. All speech, from the postmodernist point of view, is essentially about power and power relations. How the ego and how dominant groups use speech and manipulate language to attain privilege and power. Now, do individuals and groups do that? Yes. But there's much more to the story than that. And the people who do that are evil. And you have in history created minorities that are good, who seek to turn the tables and to give people language back and to make it a vehicle of truth. And to make it a vehicle of justice as well. So it's not there to consolidate power and privilege, but it's there to open up the gates of power and privilege to all. For the postmodernist, speech is always about self-interest and group interest. We must be sensitive to all undignified uses of speech, and these are undignified uses of speech. We must be cautious about the way we use discourse, and we must be very careful that we don't use language to manipulate people. Again, the lie. One of the reasons why lying is regarded to be a great evil is because it makes it difficult for you to make a good choice. And this is the world we live in, that if we're told nothing but lies, and fake news, then how will the people make wise decisions? They won't. And even in that, they will be guided and they will be manipulated. And in the elections in my country, we saw this more blatantly than imaginable in the past. Although great thinkers and writers have been warning us about this for generations. But now there it is. The blatant misuse of language. Okay, so that people cannot make rational choices. They will make irrational choices. So when you lie, you are denying people the power to choose. And when we speak the truth, then we're giving people the ability to choose. Now you choose. And as Malcolm said, God be pleased with him, give any person a choice between a clear, clean glass of water, a dirty glass of water. How many are going to choose the murky glass? Okay, they'll pick the clean glass. So that's what we want to do. Make things clear, make it real. Bismillah. So the Prophet said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in a Hasan Sahih transmission in Tirmidhi, and Ibn Majah transmits the same thing, that the Prophet said, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, إِنَّ الرَّجُلَ لَيَتَكَلَّمُ بِالْكَلِمَةِ مِنْ رِضْوَانِ اللَّهِ ما يظن أن تبلغ به ما بلغت فيكتب الله بها رضوانا إلى يوم القيامة. So he said, a person may speak a word deserving God's pleasure, never imagining, never thinking that it would take him to what it took him to the heights that it took him to. But because of it, God will record for him his good pleasure until the day of resurrection. For a single word you say, what a precious word. What a precious word. You didn't pay any attention to it, and yet this is one of the greatest things you ever did in your life. And he said also, وَإِنَّ الرَّجُلَ لَيَتَكَلَّمُ بِالْكَلِمَةِ مِنْ سَخَطِ اللَّهِ ما يظن أن تبلغ به ما بلغت فيكتب الله عليه بها سخطه إلى يوم القيامة. And truly, a person may speak a word deserving God's wrath, his sakhat, never thinking that it would take him to what it took him to, but because of it, God will record his wrath for that person until the day of resurrection. We've got to be careful what we say. And sometimes we say really foolish things. Okay? And we've got to, get control over that. Al-Tabarani and Ibn Abi Dunya, they transmit with a sahih chain that the Prophet said, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, أَعْظَمُ النَّاسِ خَطَايَا يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ أَكْثَرُهُمْ خَوْضًا فِي الْبَاطِلِ. So he said, the people with the greatest wrongs on the day of resurrection will be those of them most involved in speaking about falsehood. A lot of people today, isn't it? A lot of people today. Unfortunately, in some Muslim countries, the tendency to lie is the dominant tendency. And in the past, that bothered me very much. And I went to a particular sheikh in a particular Arab country, and I said, the people lie so much. And he said, Al-kadhibu indahum kashurb al-ma. He said, lying for them has become like drinking water. And he said that if they want to speak the truth, they will take al-hisab. If they're going to speak the truth, he has to think about it 1,000 times. But to lie, no. So this is a disaster. This is not who we are. This is not who we were in the past. But the greatest of people in wrongs are those who are the fault in speech. So now we want to talk about speaking about what does not concern us. The Prophet stated, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, in a hadith transmitted by Imam al-Tirmidhi, and this hadith is said to be one of arkan, one of the pillars of Islam. من حسن إسلام المرء تركه ما لا يعنيه. All of you know that. من حسن إسلام المرء تركه ما لا يعنيه. Part of the good Islam of a person is that he leave aside what does not concern him. This is big. May Allah enable us to do that. And to do it in our hearts, just as we do it with our tongues. Bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. And of course, when you don't concern yourself with other people's business, then there's only one business that remains for you to be concerned with, which is what? Your business. And that's what we need to be concerned with. I'm not taking care of my business. Why should I be worried about you? Why should I be worried about yours? Okay? So the rule of thumb, anything which, if you remain silent about it, will not be wrongful, it won't be an ism, and will not bring you or others harm, it is something that doesn't concern you. Okay, so what is it that doesn't concern you? Again, anything which issue, don't talk about it. It won't be ism. It won't be iniquity. It won't be wrongful. And it won't bring harm to you or to others. Then it doesn't concern you. Okay? Whenever we engage in what does not concern us, Imam Ghazali says, we destroy something precious in our own hearts. Whenever we engage in what does not concern us, we destroy something precious in our own hearts. To avoid what does not concern you leads necessarily, as we said, to concerning yourself for all those things in your life and your destiny that are consequential for you. People who are minding other people's business are not minding their own. Be careful not to make others speak about things that don't concern them either. Okay? This is why also in speaking, we should not just be concerned about ourselves, but we should also be careful not to direct the conversation of others into dangerous areas. You know, we have to also always try to guide the conversation to what is good and pay attention to it. And then if you're doing that, and you're doing that, and I'm doing that, we're going to be okay. That's good company. Okay? Imam al-Ghazali says, and part of not speaking about what does not concern you is economy of speech. Don't waste your words. Don't waste your words. And here he recites, the verse from Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 61. And when you said, Moses, we will not endure one type of food only. Now, نَصْبِرُ عَلَى طَعَامٍ وَاحِدٍ. We can't endure what? Manna and quails from God? But, that's the same thing every day. We will not endure one type of food only, so call upon your Lord for us, that he may bring forth for us some of what the earth grows, its herbs, its cucumbers, its garlic, its lentils, its onions. And Moses said, would you substitute what is lesser for what is better? أَتَسْتَبْدِلُونَ الَّذِي هُوَ أَدْنَى بِالَّذِي هُوَ خَيْرٌ, right? So go down to any town and you will have what you ask for. So Imam al-Ghazali brilliantly uses this for speech as well. So don't make your speech manna and quails. You don't have to make your speech lentils and garlic. Okay, and the example he gives here is that, every word you speak can win God's eternal pleasure. Every beautiful word you say builds you a palace in paradise. So why would you exchange for that a clod of mud? If you were given the choice between a palace and a clod of mud, which one would you take? You'd take the palace, wouldn't you? So why in our speech are we always taking clods of mud? And we're abandoning the palaces of God's pleasure. And then also something very important that Imam Ghazali talks about is the fact that we have a universal language, which is the smile. Of course, we've got the frown too, which is universal language, but a smile, the smile should come out of the generosity of your soul. Of course, there's some people who smile just to deceive. Politicians are really good at that. And the Russians say, when the wolf shows his teeth, he's not smiling. So we show our teeth sometimes, but we're not smiling. But we want to smile out of love, out of generosity. And this is universal language. And generosity brings generosity. One of the great awliya was known for his generosity. He's Abu Abbas al-Sifti, one of the 7 saints of Marrakesh, and one of the judges of Spain, of Granada, went to sit with him. And this man had miracles, and he was great, but he gave away everything. And people would bring him things, and he'd give it away. So he met people's needs. And so this judge wrote back to tell the people, I know the secret of Abu Abbas, al-Jud alladhi yanfa'i lahu al-wujud. He has generosity that is so great that existence responds in kind. Okay, and smiling is a type of that Jud. You know, and it's the Sunnah of the Prophet. It's the Sunnah of the Prophet. And smiling opens up your heart. And smiling helps cure the hearts of other people. And it is also a preliminary to speech. Right?
Dr. Umar, can you repeat what he said, please?
الجود الذي ينفعل له الوجود. اللهم إنا نسألك الجود الذي ينفعل له الوجود. We ask God to give us Jude, which is perfect generosity. That is so great that reality responds in generosity.
What in the Quran it says, وَلَا تَبْسُطُوا يَدَكُمْ كُلَّ الْبَسْطِ? Like, what's the limit to your generosity? Not to give everything away or not?
You don't have to be Abu Abbas al-Sibti. Okay? You can be Abbas al-Sibti. Okay, but these people, they break the rules. Because these people have complete tawakkul. And that's the way Abu Bakr was, isn't it? Yes, but these are general rules. So as a society, you know, we have to take care of our property. We have to gauge it, but still be generous. Still be generous. And the greatest generosity is not with your wealth. It's with what? Yourself. That's the greatest generosity of all. So Imam al-Ghazali gives us some examples of speech that is no concern of ours. Our concern is to be honest, to be real. Is that correct? And to speak the truth. Not easy to be real, is it? Avoid exaggeration and distortion. Be humble. Look up to others. Do not speak in such a way as to make yourself look special. Be honest about others. Avoid backbiting and slander. Be generous regarding others. Do not complain. Do not speak ill of what God has created. Do not speak ill of the weather or of the lands and people you do not like. We do it all the time, but we shouldn't do it. Do not exaggerate and embellish when you talk about the lands and peoples that you do like. I do that all the time. I'm a great embellisher. I come back for a trip and I have nothing but good to tell, and then I tell you the miserable night I had in the hotel and we had no electricity or anything like that. I forget about it. But actually we need to be honest. Do not ask embarrassing questions or questions that prompt people to lie. Imam al-Ghazali says, don't ask someone, are you fasting? Is that your concern? Okay. And don't ask them, do you get up at night to pray? He said, the least harm that you cause that person, if he is fasting, is that you drop them out of the registry of secrets, Diwan as-Sir, and you put them in Diwan al-Jahar. You put them in the public registry. So you were in first class, and I just put you in economy. You know, the person who's fasting, just let him or her fast. If they are going to tell you, they will tell you. But keep it secret. Also, what if that were to lead to riyah? Like, oh, you discovered I'm fasting. Oh, how good I am. Do not ask people about acts of disobedience they may have done in the past. Right? You know, some of our people, you know, especially in my country, are set up for failure. We have in my country a new Jim Crow. We had an old Jim Crow after the freeing of the slaves. So we established Jim Crow, which basically enslaves them again. And now we have a new Jim Crow, which is the prison system. And other things as well. I mean, the policeman goes up and shoots a black man from nothing. Okay, what's that mean? We're back in Jim Crow. Okay, let's get this straight. You know, that don't think you have any rights. Don't think that you're like the white man. That's what it's saying. This is new Jim Crow. You know, so a lot of our brothers and sisters in the inner city, there's no escape for prison for them, you know, whether you like it or not. That's just the way it is. I know of a brother in New York City who got out of prison. He was in prison for 15 years for drugs. When the police caught him, he told us, and I believe him, that he had $2 million of cash in his apartment. He could make $100,000 to $200,000 a day on the street. He knew how to do it. Okay, so that's not good, is it? And Brother Ali talked about after a certain time, began to sell again. And he would make $100,000 in no time. So this is set up for failure. This is the system. Who can resist that? Who can survive that? But in speaking with people of that background, would you ask them, brother, were you ever in prison? And in fact, I know people who will ask that very question. You know, were you in prison? How many years did you spend? That's horrible. That's atrocious beyond words. Imam Ali, he says there are 3 questions you should never ask. And if you're asked those questions, you should never answer them. Number 1 is how old